Welcome to Fashion Forum with Nellie in partnership with SA Creatives, shooting live from Stadio School of Fashion in Blairgowrie. Today here with me as my guest speaker, I have Cathy Heaton, who is a photographer, a model, an award-winning makeup artist. She's also a coach for model and beauty pageants, an author, a social media consultant, and the list just goes on and on. So I'm so happy to have you here with us today and to really get your insight into this wide variety of fields that you are in.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here, and what an amazing creative space this is.
Thank you so much. So basically, just to get the conversation going, is that I know in 2019 you bought the Ace Models North, and you teach classes 3 times a week. So I think my first question is, especially within the field of beauty and modeling, we always just see these pretty pictures and the exterior of the picture. But what is it important when it comes to beauty and modeling of what happens on the inside? What is it that you teach models, or how you go through the process with them in terms of body positivity, feeling well about themselves, and using social media in general?
So for me, it's very important to raise a person's confidence and self-love before we do anything. Because you can look gorgeous on the outside, but if you're not happy on the inside, that's going to portray. So for me, confidence and self-love is one of the most attractive aspects in a human being. We are instinctually attracted to confident people. So we work a lot on their self-confidence before we do anything else. And being in the beauty industry for so many years, I've realized that with the right training and the right stylists and makeup artists and hairstylists and photographers, anyone can see that potential in themselves to look like a model. So many young people look at magazines and they think that is unattainable to them. Whereas in fact, that's very attainable. And we need to remember that what we're seeing in magazines and on social media is a very filtered life. So that's something that's very important, a message that's really important to get out there in the world of beauty, is that what we're seeing is not necessarily reality. So we really do focus on that first and foremost. But I absolutely love our classes. I mean, just seeing those youngsters, and we've got models from age 4 to age 58. It is incredible. It's incredible, and every person who does it for a different reason, you know. And their authentic beauty needs to come out within that time that they're with us. And we've had models who just stay right from the beginning. When I bought Joburg North, they're still with us, and it's just amazing. We're such an amazing family. So I love it. I love coaching people, but not just to win. That's not the main focus. The main focus is for them to reach their best and most beautiful self.
That's really interesting, and especially when you touched on social media specifically and being able to differentiate the real world from the filtered environment. And I think also if we look at social media in general, that is definitely one of the components that attributes to beauty standards in general. So how do you think, or do you think it is possible to actually use social media to reinforce beauty standards or to communicate a more positive approach of beauty standards? So instead of social media being attributed to body dysmorphia and seeing visuals that you cannot reach, for example, how can we ensure that social media is used on a more positive note?
I actually think there's been a huge turn in that. Yes. I do believe that in the beginning with social media, and I've been on it since its first inception. In fact, I was involved in online marketing beforehand, and as my corporate job before I went into my makeup and photography business, before the modeling business all started. But so I've been doing it for a very long time, and I've noticed a very, very big swing, almost an anti what we had before, where women are, you'll see an advert for an app that gives you a 6-pack. And if you read the comments are like, why are we doing this? Who wants a fake 6-pack? Well, if this is not reality, then, you know, why are we buying an app to do that? And so we're actually seeing a little bit of a force fighting back against that, which I think is amazing. And we see it in the modeling industry as well. We're embracing women of all sizes, of all shapes, of all skin tones. I mean, just myself, I would never have come onto a show like this and not have had a self-tan. because I am so pale. And yet in the last couple of years, I've started to embrace the fact that this is my skin tone.
Yes.
And we see a lot more of that, especially with youngsters. They're going, you know what, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And it's so amazing. And I think it's just the body positivity movement is created really on social media.
Yes, yes.
And it's become a thing because people on social media are creating that drive that is driving, stores and clothing lines to actually start embracing women of all shapes and sizes, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I mean, specifically commenting on the newer generations, I think definitely it started with the millennials, but especially with Generation Z and some of our global celebrities such as Willow Smith and Sheila Jolie Pitt. Definitely Harry Styles, for example, as well, is in terms of how they are almost going against the beauty norms.
Absolutely.
So how is this generation so empowered? What do you think influenced them to really start creating or being inspired to create an authentic beauty rather than adhering to the traditional beauty standards from the past?
So with working with a lot of young people, I've actually realized that they are so receptive to learning. So because information is at their fingertips, when I am that old that I used to have to go to the library and look up something in a book, an encyclopedia, and find the information, whereas this generation for their whole life has been able to go onto their phone or their tablet and look up something. And so they are so receptive to taking in information and taking in advice.
Yeah.
Whereas our generation, my generation, were told, this is how you should learn, this is how you should be, and this is how you should act. So for instance, if I looked at myself in the mirror a lot when I was young, I was perceived to be vain. Whereas this generation has been taught to love themselves and appreciate themselves and be proud of their achievements. Whereas when I was young, if I spoke about my achievements, I was bragging.
Yes,
So it's this very different mindset. So our generation has really sort of imprinted on the younger generation that is actually not the way to be. You should be proud of yourself. You should love yourself. And you can go and tell the world this because you have a platform. Every single person has a platform. And so when you get stars, for instance, like a Harry Styles, he knows that his platform's very powerful.
Yeah.
And how is he going to use that platform? And if he doesn't use it, it's almost a waste. So that filters down to people who follow him, people who are influenced by him. They then in turn use their platform to talk about and this is why this world is so open and so receptive to people being authentically themselves. And I think it's just beautiful. I love it.
Oh, wow, yeah, I've never thought about the platform being like your element of power, of consuming power. And creating information that is
it's massive power.
Positive.
The platforms that consumers have today, they will dictate what happens in every market. It's actually quite incredible.
Sure. It's really like that light bulb like.
Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, it is. When you realize your own power, you also become more confident in your own authenticity and your own individualism. Yeah.
No, I love that, especially about the confidence and the individuality. So specifically one of the newer rules on Instagram, but specifically in Norway, is the new Instagram law that is now reinforced in Norway, where whenever a celebrity or an influencer posts a post, they need to inform their viewers on the content that the picture filtered have been applied, and also how the picture have been edited. So they literally have to state teeth have been whitened or black circles have been removed. So they literally have to state everything that has been edited on that picture. But do you think that actually knowing what has been edited on a picture would help with negative body image or body dysmorphia on social media when scrolling through the content?
It's interesting. I'm a little bit anti that because I feel like we're almost going a little bit too far in giving everyone this, oh, please don't, she had a pimple and it was removed.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest, we're all going to remove a pimple before we post, So I think it's good to educate people on social media that what you are seeing is filtered, and that isn't something, but I don't believe that it should have to be on every post, for instance. I mean, we see it with paid partnerships. If we see a celebrity posting something or just an influencer posting something, they have to say that this was paid for. I mean, isn't that not obvious? Maybe it's not obvious to younger people, and that's why it needs to be said. But maybe we need more education along that line, so that we don't have to have a disclaimer on every single post, and that celebrities can still carry on posting and looking gorgeous. But, you know, we have celebrities a little while ago, and it wasn't actually for social media, it was for a magazine, but Kate Winslet sued a magazine for editing her love handles and her arms. She said she looked ridiculous, and that's not who she is, and she does not want to portray that to the people who are seeing her and following her. And I think that's very brave. I think that's a good way for celebrities to actually say, you know what, I'm going to edit a pimple, but I'm not going to hide my wrinkles. I'm not going to hide my stretch marks. We saw Chrissy Teigen, who took a photograph and she was sitting down, I think she was eating or something, but you saw the stretch marks on her inner thighs, and it broke the internet that day, which is ludicrous. But anyway, what it showed the rest of the women out there was that stretch marks are normal, and everyone has them.
Exactly.
You know, so supermodels may be supermodels because of whatever reason, but they're not superhuman.
Yes.
And that's the difference. And nor are any celebrities. They are simply human beings.
Yes.
You know, and their path has taken them there, and my path has taken me here, and another person's path is going to take them there, and that's okay. And that's what we need to just instill in people as they're sort of growing up and taking in the world, is that your path is okay, and someone else's path, no matter how well they're doing or how badly they're doing, is their journey. It's no reflection on yours.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think it's once again based on that individuality that is important. And I also think, like, whenever we watch a movie or something, we immediately know that it is fiction. It's not real. So I think the same mindset needs to be applied to social media, as fashion specifically is an expression of art. The same applies to makeup. So why is the beauty kind of we're still unsure where we stand with beauty in general?
That's a very good point. If the same message, as you said with movies, was applied to social media or to magazines, what you're seeing is filtered. Understand it's filtered, appreciate it, it's beautiful, it's a beautiful image, but it's filtered.
Yes, definitely. So for the next discussion that I want to have with you specifically is about inclusivity in beauty, and more specifically inclusivity within beauty pageants. So for example, as I did my research, I saw that the first transgender contestant, Lelo Gnolo, was accepted as the first transgender model in 2019. So does that then basically mean that before 2019, one's beauty was influenced by your sexuality? So based on your sexuality, you were deemed to be beautiful or not beautiful. Even specifically, if we look at the Mr. SA and then also the Mr. Gay South Africa, why are the two competitions divided based on their sexuality? We are not necessarily seeing that in the female division. So just a general overview, especially now that you've been in the beauty pageant industry for such a long time, how has it grown and how is it becoming more inclusive?
You know, I would like to see that there wouldn't be pageants that are sort of exclusively one, whatever it is, whether it's race, gender, sexual orientation. I do like that there's one that everyone can participate in. But I think for instance, the Mr. South Africa, Mr. Gay South Africa, it's not to say in Mr. South Africa you can't have a gay contestant. You absolutely can, and a gay contestant can absolutely win. And his sexuality is never ever brought into account. It's never ever brought into account. However, I think, and I'm not that involved with Mr. Gay South Africa, so I can't necessarily say, but for me, I think there are sectors in our communities that have been marginalized for a long time. And what happened is they would say, well, if that's the case, we're going to create something that is for us. And that is the Mr. Gay South Africa, for instance. And, you know, straight men have never had to do that. They've never had to say, here we are straight men and we're going to have a pageant. They've never had to do that, whereas gay men have had to put themselves out there and say, we're actually proud of who we are and we are going to be represented in this pageant. And so I support them for that specific, for that reason. I support them no matter what. I mean, I think it's an amazing opportunity for people to go out there and to shine. You know, we've seen it in many different things. I mean, there's like a Miss India, South Africa, and you know, that sort of thing, and then they can go and they compete globally as well in an international competition. And it doesn't mean for 1 minute that she can't enter Miss SA or Mrs. SA, she can. But there are those competitions for smaller and minority groups as well. So, you know, all the power to them.
Yes.
But competitions do not take into account your sexuality. And it's actually quite interesting. So the international beauty pageants have accepted transgender contestants for quite a while.
Okay.
And Miss South Africa hadn't. And that's why they changed the rules this year, so that they could be more in line with the international rules. Because we actually, Miss Spain, if I'm not mistaken, was 2 years ago, Miss Spain was transgender and represented Spain at the Miss Universe pageant, which was amazing.
Wow.
So, you know, I just think we're living in a very inclusive world. We're living in a world where you can be accepted for who you are, the individualism that you present, and that allows you to be authentically you.
Yes.
Because before, in society where people would hide who they were for whatever reason, they felt that people wouldn't accept them or whatever it is, they now can do that.
Yes.
I mean, and this has happened very quickly. So I finished high school, matriculated in the early 90s. We did not know who was gay and straight in our school. We never discussed it.
Yes,
It was it was never a topic. It never would have bothered me, but it was never a thing. And my sister graduated in 2010, and she came out after that. But all her friends went together to the matric dance, and they went with their partners.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't an issue.
Yes,
Whereas
yes.
just a decade and a half before, it wasn't even spoken about. And that's how quickly times have changed. And it's so incredible that I think we're living in this space where people are allowed to be who they are and be authentically who they are, because that is beautiful. If we aren't who we are and we all try and fit in and be the same, life would be incredibly boring.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
So bland.
I find it very interesting on what you actually stated by all this information that there are actually the competitions for minority groups and etc. So I think for me personally, as a quick reflection, is that instead of always focusing on what isn't being done right, what isn't being included, is actually finding the information of how far we've come to build inclusivity. So a little bit of research, there might not be as much awareness around it as of yet, but it's in the pipeline, it's currently happening. So I think also changing one perspective of seeing the world, doing some more information to see, is there something happening?
Well, don't we always focus on what isn't and what is, what should be, instead of what is the progress that's actually been made? I mean, I started beauty pageants at 12 years old, I'm now 44, so I've been in this industry a very, very long time, and the changes have been so incredible. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing to see, and I think it is that we do need to change our perspective, because we are living in a very much a cancel society. If someone does something wrong or puts their foot out, then no one must ever buy from them again, no one must ever support them again. And that's also, for me, that's also a form of bullying.
Yes.
You know, because people make mistakes.
Yeah.
And people should be able to learn from those mistakes and be given those opportunities to rectify them. And if they don't rectify them, then fair enough, lose followers, you know. But if you rectify them, you should be able, and this goes for companies as well. Yes, we made a mistake. We see that. Okay, it's time to grow and it's time to learn. And let's focus on how much good has actually been done and how much progress has happened.
Yeah.
And where can we then go from here? How can we better it?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, specifically speaking about the perspective change that I've just this is what needs to happen, is basically specifically when I started researching our topics and going through the internet, specifically when one Googles beauty pageants or children beauty pageants, the amount of negative comments is on the first 5 pages about low self-esteem, low confidence, all of the negative elements as we've just stated. That is why I wanted to hear from your point of view, and being within the industry, what is the positive influence, or what is the positive outcomes that you have gone through yourself, and even teaching to other individuals? So what is the power of beauty pageants actually, instead of just the low self-esteem or the disorders?
Do you know, the low self-esteem and eating disorders and all sorts of things like that are so minuscule compared to the positives that come out of beauty pageants. When you walk on that stage, you must remember that anyone who participates in a beauty pageant has worked on his or her mind, body, and soul before they have got to that stage, before they have got to that interview. It is a very serious, inverted commas, sport.
Yes.
Okay. So, you know, when I did Mrs. South Africa, I competed 7 years ago. I was the best version of myself. Physically and mentally, I was on cloud 9. I was filled with adrenaline and a love for life and passion for life. And when they told me that I had to walk in swimwear, I was like, I've had 2 children. I'm 36 years old, and 37, turned 37 while I was doing it. Like, I don't know if I really want to do this, you know. And let me tell you, I had signed up for it, and so fine, I was going to go do it. I worked so hard. And so when I walked through those doors into that judging room in my swimwear, I was the best I could be. And that was so incredibly empowering for me. And what is so amazing about pageants is the affirmation you get is not from the judging, it's not from the placement in the pageant, it's not from the crowd shouting your name when you're on that stage. It's from the fact that you have put yourself out of your comfort zone and you have done something that the majority of people would be too afraid to do.
Yes.
Let's be honest.
Yes, totally agree.
Okay, so you know that you're one of those few that had the guts to get up there and say, I love myself and I feel good about myself, enough to walk out here and prove myself worthy of being in this competition, whatever may be at the end of the day. And it is so incredibly empowering. Now, when you get to the children, it is controversial, and I'm not a huge advocate for children's pageants. We do have a few smaller models that compete. None of, in South Africa, and as I believe in France, they also passed a ruling a little while ago, no one under the age of 12 is ever allowed to wear makeup in a pageant. They are not allowed to wear false teeth. Believe it or not, in America, a lot of the baby pageants, if they've lost their teeth, sort of 5, 6 years old, they wear a denture. The thought of that, it just blows my mind. You know, a child is a child, and if they want to do the pageant and they want to walk in a pretty dress and do a little turn and be cute and sweet, they must be judged age appropriately and according to who they are. That is my opinion.
Yes.
There are pageants that are over the top when it comes to that. You don't get that in South Africa. We don't adhere to those rules. All of our children under the age of 12, there is no makeup on their faces. There's no suggestive movements. They have to be judged according to their age and how their age would behave. Even the questions that they get asked on stage have to be vetted and are age appropriate. So they are very careful with it. Again, it is, you know, you run the risk of your child not placing, and therefore you have to deal with that disappointment. But it's the same in modeling. You know, I've got 2 sons, and they would do adverts, and they would go to castings, and they would meet the brief and say, well, perfect, I am perfect for this brief, and off they go, and there'd be 100 kids that look like them. We've also fitted the brief, and they knew that they had to perform, and if they didn't get it, then, well, what can I learn from this, and how can I go back and next time and do better? And also understand that there's a time and a place for each person to shine. And if it's not your moment, then it's that boy's moment. And so I taught my children that way, and it's not a bad thing for children to learn to not do so well and to fail. I'm not saying they fail at it, but, you know, to not be the number one all the time. Because it teaches humility as well. So there are good things that can come from it. It is really how you manage it, though. So if you're a pageant mom who's saying, get out there and go and win. then it's, but I've never come across moms like that. My moms are all so lovely and so down to earth, and their daughters like to perform. They are performers, they're born performers.
Okay, so I have to say that's definitely where my misinformation or the representation of what I think it is. So, for example, on TLC, toddlers and tiaras.
It's horrendous.
And
it
that
is
was
very
like,
scary.
The poor child just wants to play with the teddy and then the costume, and it's crazy. So
it wouldn't be a reality show if there wasn't some sort of over dramatized, look on the pageant.
Yeah. So once again, identifying that. What is real
and what is absolutely.
So it's amazing to take that into consideration.
Not one of these reality shows is unscripted. Just bear that in mind.
Yeah, definitely.
You might say something and they'll say, "Oh, that was really great. Hang on, let's film that. Let's see how we could say it with a bit more cattiness or something." And so I think it's. Even those housewives of all these cities. Oh my gosh, I would are women really like that,
Exactly.
And they're not in my group of friends, so I think it's very strange.
But I also think what's very relevant, what you just stated, is what you mentioned earlier, that modeling and beauty pageants is aligned with being a sport. So it's the same as going to apply that if someone goes for swimming competitions or netball or rugby, you always have that. You either get into the team or you don't. So it's not like it's set up for failure. So I think for me personally and many of the viewers is changing that mindset of how we view the modeling industry, how we view beauty per se. Because I think also another big discussion is how, especially now on social media and the internet, is how the theory is based on beauty is based on unachievable standards, that models are showcasing beauty that isn't achievable, but as you've stated, they do the work, they put in the time, they have the effort. So working on that, how does one then work to change that mindset that beauty is unachievable?
Well, I think the beauty pageants of today are really doing a great job. If you look at our Miss South Africa, we've had Zozibini Tunzi, who had short hair. Yes. We have had Shurufatso, who's bald and has kept her bald hair, and she's going to Miss World, and she is looking magnificent. We're not adhering to that typical standard of, it was blonde hair, blue eyes, tall, skinny. Those girls are almost passe, you don't see them as often, which is a shame because they are still beautiful and should still be recognized for being beautiful, but they aren't as popular in the beauty pageant world anymore. In terms of modeling, they still get signed with modeling agencies, but they have to be very sensational actually, or very different looking, maybe with lots of freckles or something that makes them unique. What we are seeing is modeling agencies signing girls who have vitiligo, for instance, who are beautiful but have, different skin tones. We have models with lots and lots of freckles. We have models who, maybe have a scar across their face or something that's just different about them. A lot of our men are not, they're not muscular men. They are tall and quite slim looking, and who maybe at school they would have been deemed as lanky and geeky, whereas actually in the modeling world they are divine. So I think the modeling industry as a whole is changing that perception that beauty can come in any form. Beauty, as they say, is in the eye of the beholder. What I see as beautiful and you see as beautiful is totally different to what the viewers could see as beautiful. So I think it's really wonderful that we accept that when someone has got something unique, that is actually special. And that's good for youngsters to see, especially small children growing up. You can imagine a child going to school who's got a birthmark on their face and other kids saying, "Oh my gosh, what's on your face?" You know how children can be. And yet that child is probably going to grow up and end up on a billboard in Times Square because she's unique and beautiful. So we need to instill that in kids, and kids need to be able to see role models out there in the world that look like them. And that's what Zozibini Tunzi said at the Miss Universe. She said, "I want girls like me," I always get goosebumps when I think about it, girls like me to see it's possible.
That's nice reinforcement.
And it was massive. If you think about how many young girls around the world, continent of Africa and around the world, look like Zozi. And to see her on that international stage winning It's so incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And we must never, people like to say beauty pageants are not relevant anymore. Well, actually, what did that do? And how can you say that's irrelevant?
Yes.
It's massive. That was a bigger statement to young girls in the continent of Africa then I can't even remember when last there was a statement that told them that they were important and valid and could go and achieve their goals.
Yeah.
It may not be a beauty pageant. They may see themselves ice skating at the Olympics one day. Well, girl, there's nothing stopping you.
Exactly.
You go for your dream.
Yes. No, that's really, I agree with you. And then basically, so we have established that beauty pageants, and I think modeling is a very cost-effective hobby or career. So would you say that within society and maybe the way that we perceive beauty, that beauty is an indication of one's status, or that beauty is aligned with your status?
I mean, there's studies that show that the more beautiful someone is, the easier their life tends to go, because people will, doors open for them, they go for an interview, the interviewee likes them, that sort of thing. There is that, which is terrible and it is superficial, but it's human nature and everyone's guilty of it. But then again, beauty is an eye of the beholder. What someone may think, I look nice, and another person may go, like, it's not my type, and that's not my problem. That's their problem. That's the way they receive me, and that's actually never your problem, is how someone receives you. But I think it's how you portray yourself in life that is going to establish how people receive you, and therefore is going to build on the status that you hold within society.
Okay.
So if you look at someone who's very, very successful, very few are actually really good looking. And if you take away celebrities in Hollywood.
Okay, definitely, yeah.
If we look at people in business, for instance, who have been very, very successful, names that I could tell you and you would know straight away who I'm talking about, they're not necessarily the world's most beautiful people, but they had the belief within themselves that what they had to offer had value. And they had the confidence to go and do that.
Yeah.
And that in itself made them more successful in terms of status.
Yes.
So beauty can be used, but it's not everything.
Yeah, so it's once again actually basically what you said previously, that beauty is the core value of being beautiful is your confidence that is actually being executed. So whether you buy a very affordable skincare product or very expensive, it's not going to make you more confident or less confident, maybe on the psychological level.
Do you know, as a makeup artist, I mean, I've been a makeup artist for 19 years, and I am shocked when I work on shoots how many models, top models from top agencies, sit down and have low self-esteem. They have no confidence. And I'm like, you are so beautiful. Like, what is your, oh no, I don't like this, And I'm like, that is crazy. And then they get in front of the camera and it's this alter ego that comes out because they know they can photograph well. But in the real world, they almost, I think what happens is because they're aware that they're a model, they're aware that people perceive them in a certain way, they almost try and dim their light a little bit in the real world, so people don't judge them. I say real world, but in normal life, in society, they dim that because they don't want to be perceived as maybe a model who is not very intelligent, for instance, because our beauty queens are intelligent. Yeah. They are doctors, lawyers, honors degree students. I mean, they are very inspirational people.
Yes, yes.
So we often see that the beautiful people tend to almost hide themselves because they don't want to be judged for being beautiful. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. Now, that's in the modeling industry. In the beauty industry, beauty pageant industry, you tend to see the opposite because they have to go on stage and sell themselves. So they've got to learn to be confident, and they practice confidence and self-love every single day. So they are like, I'm here. Whereas you'll find your models tend to be a little bit more subdued and a little bit less like, I know, I'm beautiful. They'll hide it. They'll come. They'll no makeup on. And they never wear hardly will wear makeup outside. Yes. And you're like, but you're so gorgeous. Why don't you do this every day? And they're like, oh no. And it's very, very unusual. Like, it's very strange for me.
Yeah, I've never even thought about it, but now that you mentioned it, and I think back to the few models that I know, it's basically like.
You can see that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it often, and it's not all of them. I'm generalizing, obviously, but it always strikes me as very interesting because they really are, like, they really were first in line when it came to looks. And you're like,
yeah.
why are you not out there, like, really just showing your best self? And I think they've probably gone through life being judged for being beautiful, and being beautiful, people just assume that, which is so ridiculous, that you are not smart, or that you're superficial, or that that's all that you have to offer is your beauty, which is absolutely ludicrous.
It's a very interesting mindset or approach to view this whole discussion, because I mean, usually we think that models have everything, they're beautiful, they have status, they're just happy, and I mean, through the filtered media, it is being reinforced. So
it's not that easy to make money in the modeling industry either. People tend to think that they're so wealthy and they have everything.
Yeah,
it's a lot of hard work. They go to castings and they don't get paid to go to castings. They go and they sit with other models that look like them and are as tall as them and meet the brief of the client. And they've then got out of 100, 500 women and guys sometimes, they have to be the one that gets selected. That's tough. They can go to so many castings before they actually start getting work. And some jobs are very well paid.
Yeah.
And some are mediocre, you know. So it's not actually that easy to do. But as you said, it's a cost-effective thing to do because it doesn't really cost you to you know, when you go to a casting, it's not like you have to buy clothes or anything. You go in your jeans and your little strappy top or whatever it is, and you go and you meet the casting director and you do your thing. But you obviously have to look after yourself. So, but again, you know, gone from false nails to more natural nails these days. Models, they don't want you to wear makeup when you go for castings. They want to see photographs where you've got nothing, no makeup.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, that's not for me. But that's, so it's very minimalistic. And again, it's finding that natural beauty.
Definitely. So I think definitely also one of the things that I just want to touch on, specifically if we talk about models and the beauty and this whole discussion about the beauty not being attainable or not being realistic for our normal people per se, based on status, time, resources, skill, etc. Would you then state that being a model per se, as it is a career, that it's almost not their goal to be relevant or to be, what's the word that I'm looking for? Sorry, relatable. Would you say that being a model, their overall goal within the field of beauty, is it to be relatable to the audience, or is it really to show or inspire the audience rather, but now society maybe sees it as unrealistic, but it's based on this is what you can achieve rather than just being, it's not relatable at the end of the day?
You know, I think there's different parts of modeling. So if you want to go into high fashion, you want to walk SA Fashion Week, you want to walk New York Fashion Week, you want to go to Milan, that sort of thing, you are going to be a high-end model. So you are going to be very, very tall. I mean, we're talking 178 for a girl. Yeah, very tall, very, very tall. Tall, slim, you know, 90 centimeter hips, you know, that sort of thing. So very tall. Those are, and the reason why there are those measurements is because, you know, your fashion designers, I'm sure they'll know at last office, your fashion designers will make a standard size.
Yes.
And that's the model that will then go and walk on the stage with that standard size. So they can't say, okay, but we really love her, but she's like 165, we'll put her in, because the clothes are not going to fit. She's going to drown in them. So they have a specific model. So if you're going to go high end, you're going to need to fit that role. If you want to be in television commercials as a model, which is very high paying if you get good commercials, then you can really be any height, size, because it varies. So they want people that are relatable. They want you and me and my husband and my kids to all watch the TV and go, I see myself buying that cereal, or I see that me driving that car. So that model is then someone who's relatable.
Okay.
And then models who are fashion editorial models, they would be somebody who's got something very special about them, something that's unique about them. Yes. So it could be like a beautiful big afro, or it could be, as I said, freckles on the face, or, you know, something like that. So it's you know, there would be very interesting. So there's various different avenues that you can go in. Then the beauty pageant. is very different. So that is very beautiful, very, can walk beautifully, can speak beautifully, is very eloquent, and can articulate what they want to say in a fantastic way. They also need to be incredibly intelligent. I mean, top 5 questions, let me tell you, when you're standing backstage and you are top 5 and you're coming out for that question and answer session that you don't know what they're going to ask you, your heart is pounding so hard that you think the microphone's going to pick it up.
Oh, wow.
It is scary. It is scary. I mean, you have no idea what they're going to ask you. And then this question comes and you've literally got a split second to figure out what you're going to say. So the research and the mentorship sessions that you go through in order to prepare yourself for that moment, that's why I say it's mentally, physically, spiritually, these people put their heart and souls into it. And I think it deserves a lot more respect than it actually gets.
Definitely.
I really do admire them. You know, we had Demi Lee, Nell Peters, who's now Demi Lee Tebow. She won Miss Universe as well. And you know, she's won 6'7", if I'm not mistaken. So she's shorter than I am.
Oh, wow.
And yet she went out there because
she
worked for about 5 years before that, working for people who were in the industry, getting to know the industry, making contacts, learning, going to modeling schools. You know, she was actually a part of Ace Models. Yeah, which was wonderful. Not my academy, unfortunately, but she was part of Ace Models. She was one of our original models. You know, she did the homework for 5 years. So when she got to Miss SA, we knew she was going to win.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that her fellow contestants knew she was going to win, and it probably upset them.
Yeah.
But she had put in the work.
Yeah, it was her time to shine.
So it was her time to shine. And it's not to say any of the other contestants weren't worthy. They were incredibly worthy. But she was just that much more polished, and that's how you win. So the work and the effort that goes before you see that woman competing is actually enormous. And you know, you were saying, you know, something, is it attainable? You said that a few times. Is beauty attainable?
Yeah.
What is beauty? So for me, my idea of beauty is different to your idea of beauty. So if I look at a girl and I say, gosh, I wish I looked like that.
Yeah.
So maybe she's slimmer than me. So I then need to prioritize what I eat and how much I exercise. Okay. It's about the effort you put in. So yes, she may have better bone structure than me and all those sort of things, but there are things that I can do to attain my level of what I think is beautiful too. And how many people sit back and say, I'm not prepared to do that, or I'll never look like that, and therefore never make the effort? Because you know what, everyone can look nice if they made the effort.
That's so like motivational,
It's totally. I mean, people say to me all the time, oh, I never have time for makeup. Instead of telling me you don't have time, tell me you don't prioritize it.
Yeah.
So I don't have time to exercise, okay? That is really, I say that all the time. I do not have time for exercise. The truth is I don't prioritize it.
Yes.
If I wanted to be slimmer and I wanted to be more firm, I would prioritize it.
Okay.
So when someone says to me, a model beauty is unattainable, or I'll never look like that, I say, but do you even try? Because if you're comfortable being who you are, I'm 100% behind it. Because that's amazing. That's confident, and I love that. That's beautiful. But if you want to be better, it's only up to you to do it.
Sure, that totally makes sense. I totally agree with you. And then the very last question to wrap up this session is within your current field, and I mean, you are basically tiptoeing in everything from makeup to photography to modeling, public speaking, but basically in your specific field of industry or expertise, what is it that you are currently doing to be the change that you wish to see?
Do you know what I always say at Ace Models? That I want to be who I needed when I was young. And that, I believe, is the change I'm actually actively involved in, is showing young people what their value is now. And because I believe they're so receptive to learning and to taking in advice, I feel that when we say to them, but look at yourself, look at what you've achieved, and know that who you're hanging out with is influencing your goals. So I'm very much goal driven. So, you know, I say to them, what are your goals for the future? What are your goals for this year, and what are your goals for 5 years' time? And what are you doing now that's aligning with those goals, and what aren't you doing that's maybe damaging those, that trajectory to that goal. And I needed someone like that. I needed someone to say, hey, Cathy, you know what? I see potential in you. I know that you're worthy and I know that you've got it in you. You've just got to do X, Y, and Z, or you've got to believe in yourself a little bit more. And I didn't have that. I've got an incredible family and a mother who is incredibly dedicated. But sometimes you need someone outside of your family to say, especially as a teenager.
Yeah.
Because you know your mom's going to tell you you're beautiful. You know your mom's going to tell you the sun shines when you wake up, you know. But when someone else says, I see you, and you are worthy. You are beautiful as you are. You are perfect as you are. You are resonating at the most beautiful frequency. Go and resonate even higher. You know, they take it in and they're like, wow. And that's what I needed, and that's what I am hoping to do. So I'm actively being part of the change I want to see in young people.
That's amazing. I think you are a fantastic mentor. I feel inspired and motivated and ready to do makeup every day, prioritizing at the end of the day.
You know what, honestly, if makeup is not someone's priority, I really don't, it doesn't really bother me. Like, if you don't want to do your face and you're fine with your hair being the way it is, like, all the power to you. I'm so happy for you. But if you want to prioritize it, then make time. It's the same for me. I don't prioritize certain things that I should be. And so this week I've actually like, no, I'm changing, because you know what? I am making excuses. And I want to prioritize me a little bit more as well. So I hope that inspires people to do that too.
Definitely. So thank you so much for being on our show and for giving us your time and your insight as well as your knowledge. I think I've learned so much in today's session, like my point of view, how media has represented certain aspects of the beauty industry that I'm now like, oh wow. So thank you so much for your time and being here today.
Such a pleasure. Thank you for the conversation. I think it's actually really necessary, so thank you.
Thank you so much.